Okay, welcome back. Okay, I was pretty brusque with respect to some of the issues we mentioned in part one. Now, I want to go back and I want to preface some things and I want to clear up a couple of other items. First of all, every religious system that exists, okay, has had or has segments or followers that are just way over the top, more interested in doing battle, doing war. It started back with the Crusades. The Roman Church was born out of the Roman Empire, the collapsed Roman Empire, and you had a conquering king, Constantine, who made this Roman Church a Christian church, but it was a different type of church. The traditions that have grown up within the religion itself they're basically from Babylon, and they don't represent, because of the anti-Semitic spirit that we spoke about, the getting rid of everything Jewish except circumcision, and gone astray. But there's so many great people there, so many really true believers that really love the Lord, and they're born again believers too. They may not understand it, but they are. And in other religions, like the one in the Middle East, has a faction. And like there's 1.2 billion Christians, Catholics in the world. There's about the same Muslims in the world. And is only a portion of each of those religions that are really, really off, out of bounds and violent, warlike, in a time where if you don't believe what we believe, we'll just kill you. We read that the saints who were beheaded. Now, I don't know too many cultural religions that do any beheading. I know one. It's been going on, and it continues to go on as we speak. So there are factions, and that's not to say that all the people there believe the same way, because I have dear friends in both groups, both religions, and they're some of the most beautiful, loving people in the world. They want nothing more than to live free, be able to practice their faith, which is why they came to America to begin with, and live peaceful lives. But there are a large percentage of people that feel differently, okay, much differently. So I wanted to make sure that we said that, and that it's clear that we're not talking about whole-scale civilizations. There are factions within these organized religions that have been and continue to be violent. Whether you hear about them or not, it exists. It exists. Okay? Now, let's go back into Revelation. We're going to pick back up in Revelation 18th chapter, where it says, Babylon the Great is destroyed. We spoke about the harlot. We know what the harlot is. It's a false religion. Look, I don't care if there's peaceful people in either religion. It's false, it's false. That's it. There's one book, there's one religion. I ask about where these people are. I ask about, they believe in Islam, they believe Jesus is a prophet. They believe Muhammad's a prophet. Well, I don't remember Muhammad doing any miracles. I don't remember Muhammad being crucified to save anybody. And as far as anything goes, in 632 A.D., when it was founded, where was we talked about Ilat and Allah? Where were they when God parted the Red Sea? When he delivered Moses and Israelites out of Exodus, the physical Exodus? Where was he? You hear no mention of this whole issue, except if you look historically where the origins of these things are, which we're trying to uncover a little bit. But again, it is not, and it can never be, a condemnation of a people, but only the things that are abominable in the sight of humanity, in the concept of a loving God. Loving God doesn't tell anybody to go out and slaughter the rest of the world, or whoever doesn't, kill little children, any of that stuff. And if he does, then he my God. Anyway, Babylon the Great is destroyed. So we spoke about the kingdoms of the beast. And by the way, I hope you caught on a little bit, because I really do, but I'm gonna let you in on a little thing. When I talked about the marks, which we're going to go over again, and when I talked about the two beasts, we talked about the head wound, which was the chief of state at the time. It was the Ottoman Empire, where it was a kingdom. It had been, it is, and it will be. It is not, and it will be. And we can see that the beast and the head wound issue are in different places in the different beasts. One is, it's mentioned in the beast of the world, and then re-mentioned again in the beast on the land. It's not a contradiction in the Bible. And in further study and further understanding, I will tell you this, that there is one nation that is a common denominator, all right, in both beast systems. The world system, because it's a very wealthy country, and the harlot system of the false religion, the counterfeit bride. It straddles and is deeply involved in both. And that is, once again, Turkey. And I did mention it, but I'll mention it again. They recently changed the spelling of their name to a more Arabic flavor. Hey, that's fine. It's your prerogative. Okay. But there's things going on there. And the positioning that they're taking in the world, and in world affairs, military affairs, and economic affairs, is a dangerous one. Is a dangerous one. See, this whole thing and when they converge down on the Middle East, by the way, just to let you know, I've mentioned it more than a few times, that it is not only Israel that they want out of there, but remember, you got Shia Muslim and Sunni Muslim on opposing sides, and they really, I hate to use the word hate, but they despise one another because they think that they're the worst kind of traitor. They're the worst kind of heretic. All right? Internal fighting, just like there's been in Christianity. The Catholics, the Baptists, the Presbyterians, the Anglicans. There's war all over the place. Literally wars have been fought over this stuff, okay? Over religions. Instead of having faith. Okay, so to get back on that track, the other prize is, you say Saudi Arabia. Oh, for the oil? Well, yeah, of course for the oil. That's why China wants it. That's why Iran wants it. But really, there's a fight for two places. One is Jerusalem. The other one is Mecca, and Mecca is in Saudi Arabia. Mecca is the holiest place in all of Islam, just as Jerusalem is the holiest place in all Judaism and Christianity. All right? Not Rome. Never was, and never will be. So the great struggle between these great nations that are forming and moving as we speak, okay, have to do with that. So I just want to clear that up and amalgamate both of the concepts where the beasts are mentioned and the marks and different things are mentioned in both sides of the fence in terms of both beasts. Okay, Turkey is the linking common denominator. All right. Okay, so after all these things that he saw, all right, the earth was lightened with his glory, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen. Well, that's going right back to Revelation 16:13 and the sixth vial. Listen, is fallen, has become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. The nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Okay? Her delicacies means her wealth. All right? We can qualify that. Let me just flip back here for a second and go into Psalms. just to get a clarification. Okay, here we go. So in Psalm, I think it's 141. Yeah, 141, verse 4. Incline not my heart to any evil thing, to practice wicked works with men that work iniquities, and let me not eat of their dainties. Eating of their dainties is their wealth, their enticements. Remember, the spirit that controls that is Jezebel. It's a spirit of seduction and control, okay? And the wealth is what they're talking about. The kings of the earth have drunk of this, have gotten rich over this, as well as they have, okay? It's just a shell game. That's what it is. And then another voice came from heaven and said, come out of her, my people, do not partake of the sins. Don't receive of those plagues. Okay? Again, it's very consistent with Revelation 16, verse 12, when he speaks of the plagues. The dainties, the luxuries is what that really means. Her sins have reached unto heaven, and God remembers her iniquities. So reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill her double. She glorified herself, lived deliciously, gave torment, sorrow, said in her heart, I sit, a queen. Here we go. Jezebel, a queen. And I am no widow, and I shall see no sorrow. That's pretty arrogant. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day. One day. Remember I said about those vile judgments, they don't have to be spread out. All of a sudden they open up the seal, then the trumpet blows, and then, sometime down the road, the vials poured out. No, boom, boom, boom. That's how fast it can happen, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, like a thief in the night. How many times do we have to hear this promise from the Lord himself? Okay? He says, I'm going to destroy it in one day, with death and mourning and famine. All again, Revelation 16, all of the plagues of its Exodus. All right? The physical Exodus took Israel out of there by the blood of the Lamb, which marked them on the lintels of their doorposts so that the angel of death rode over them. They escaped. They were led. This Exodus begins with the rapture, which we talked about in week 3 or 4. There's a spiritual Exodus that's coming. And a destruction to the evil is coming. She shall, listen now, back to Revelation 16, she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judges her. And the earth bewails her. The kings of the earth who've committed with her fornication, lived deliciously with her, will bewail her, lament when they see the smoke of her burning. Burning. Standing afar off for fear of her torment. And it says, alas, that great city Babylon, his judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no man will buy their merchandise anymore. Now we look at here. Remember, Jezebel comes from Tyre or Sidon, okay? These are products that came, and goods that came from Tyre and Sidon. Listen in verse 12 of 18, Revelation 18. The merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and of pearls. Now listen, fine linen and purple, and silk and scarlet, and thinewood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, etc., most precious wood of brass, iron, and marble. Most of these things, and many of them, all come from the Middle East, but many of them came from Tyre and Sidon, okay? Particularly those of the color. Remember what the harlot of Babylon wears for colors. Remember, go back and look. Okay? So for in 1 hour, all the great riches have come to nothing. There's every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors, as many as trade by the sea, stood far off. Kind of put a picture in your head of what's been going on around here, huh? Ships standing afar off, not able to collect their bounty or to sell the merchandise. They sit and watch from afar off as the city burns. And they cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, say, what city is like this city? And, they cast dust on their heads, weeping and wailing. It says, we're rich all at the ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. And heaven rejoices. In verse 20 it says, rejoice over her, thou heaven, and all the apostles and prophets, and God hath avenged you on her. And then the mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall the great city of Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. So that millstone, either it's a spiritual millstone, symbolic of the sinking of that city, or it in fact is a stone that we know as comets. And then in heaven you could hear the harps and trumpeters playing, the craftsmen, and the sound of the millstone was heard no more at all for the workers. And the light of a candle shines no more in all of thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more in you, for the merchants were the great men of the earth, and for by their sorceries were all nations deceived. The word sorceries here is pharmakia. It means medicine or poison. You don't have to believe me. Look it up. Sorceries is the word pharmakia. And we know what pharmacy comes from pharmakia. And it also called poison all over the world. And the nations were deceived. I don't think I have to say anything. Let him who has ears to hear, let him listen. I'm reading right out of the book. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints, and all that were slain upon the earth. Okay. Well, I want to go back and talk about a couple of things to make some things plain and clear. Again, the attacks on Israel are happening as we speak. I want to go back to the year 67 AD to 70 AD when Vespasian, remember we talked about it from Daniel, and Jerusalem was attacked. They had to run to the hills. Well, because Rome was the controlling empire, but remember, this was in Jerusalem. A lot of people assume that the Romans their legions out there in Jerusalem were all Italians or Romans. They weren't. The only natural Roman folks out there were the Praetorian Guard. Okay? What they did was hire mercenaries. Okay? Mercenaries. You say, well, mercenaries, really? Well, where did they come from? Well, they were from the local people, the mixed multitude from around Israel. Mixed is Arab or Arab. And that's who they hired. We can read of this in Tacitus, who is a historian, okay? And he says, according to Publius Cornelius Tacitus, a senator and a Roman historian, quote, Titus Caesar found in Judea 3 legions, the 5th, the 10th, and the 15th, to attack Jerusalem. And to these he added the 12th from Syria, and some men belonging to the 18th and 3rd, whom he had withdrawn from Alexandria, Egypt. The force was accompanied by a strong contingent of Arabs who hated the Jews with the usual hatred of neighbors. So, as I said, when Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, very few, if any, were actually Italian or even European for that matter. All right? And we just read where they're from. And we read exactly where they're from a historian, an ancient historian. Okay? That false religious beast really, really wants Mecca too. It's a system. It's like a global apostasy, this whole system. But Mecca, again, is the spiritual capital of the entire Muslim world. And we're not just talking about Mecca alone as Babylon, but there are other followers. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and all these places are big, big money empires right now. And they're resurgent empires of ancient empires from the past. And that's the danger. They've never existed together at the same time in any point in history. And now they do. Again, but everything is prophesied. All right, we're going to take just a little diversion in some areas that I want to talk about. And oh, by the way, before when I mentioned, how I did review and re-mention the rapture. All right, and there's a Greek word, paralambano. Almost sounds like Italian deli. Hey, go to Paralambanos. But it's not. It really means in where we see in Scripture, a lot of folks want to know about this whole thing in the rapture and the date. And they lean on Matthew where it says one was taken, one was left in the field. And taken, the word taken is paralambano in Greek, and it means to lift out, to snatch them away, that they were, but in a sense of as receive them and associate them with yourself. So we see a confirmation yet again where the people of God are taken out, and we talked about that because it's hard to imagine, although anything's possible, going through what the rest of this world is going to go through. And we really just want to be able to get the information out there so people can begin to think about this stuff and get an idea. Because the time frame, listen, I can't tell you anything about predicted times. I can tell you, as we did from the beginning of the generation, 67, 70 years, 2037, a lot of things have to happen. Some of them are already prophesied, some of them are already happening. All right, but there's a whole another side of things that are going to go on. All right, and people want to set out a hard timeline. You're going to find out that the timeline, even in Revelation, is not coinciding with what is being taught out there and has been being taught for many, many years about rapture, this, Armageddon, boom, 1,000 years, bah, bah, bah. It's out of sequence, and we're going to show that. Oh, by the way, going back to what I said about the mark of prostration is one of other distinguishing bodily marks in the Quran as well. But the trace of prostration is really the mark of prostration, and it's a denotation of their community membership and their religious tradition and piety. And so it is actually a mark. It is called the Sima. All right, and it's well mentioned and established in the Quran if you want to go look at that stuff. Just to follow up and give you some additional information, I want to make sure that you're armed with everything, and you can always comment back and swordofspirit@gmail.com if you want. And, if there's nothing ridiculous, I'll try my best to answer you. I'm not really entertaining much of anything else. Anyway, let's take a few minutes before we break for this particular episode, and we're going to start to talk a little bit about this turkey. I want to make sure that we are providing enough of information to let you make these decisions and start to do some investigation yourself, okay? We know already that many of the Turks are descended from Esau. We know this. And Turkey is, in fact, another son of Esau. Okay? They're always in the news. They are Edom or Esau, and they're also so-called Palestinians. Yes, Palestinians are Edomites, descendants of Esau, Jacob's brother. The Turks are descended from Esau, the son of Isaac, and prophecy tells us that Esau and Edom are the same person. We saw that in Genesis 36 and then Genesis 27, where we read Isaac's actual prophetic blessing upon Esau. He says, so Esau dwelt in Mount Seir, which is Edom, Then Isaac, his father, answered, said to him, behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth, and that includes crude oil, and of the dew of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live, by war. By your sword you shall live. When he went and met his brother, Jacob, he came with a complement of 200 men on horseback with swords. A frenemy. They're brothers. Not half-brothers like Isaac and Ishmael. These are blood brothers. And it shall come to pass that when you become restless, you'll break the yoke from his neck. So Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And the days of mourning for my father are at hand, and then I will kill my brother Jacob. This is Esau, all right? Now, the wives, he married all these Hittite wives and Canaanite wives, all idol worshippers, all right? And that was his lot. That's what he did. All from the area in Turkey. Muslim nations, especially those where the descendants of the Hittites and the Edomites live, have a common Muslim god to unify their peoples. The word snare here that is used in is a very accurate term where it says you'll be snared, all right? Don't obey. They shall be thorns in your side, and their God shall be a snare to you. In Judges 2:2-3, all right? You didn't obey my voice. These people are going to be a snare to you and a thorn. Well, they were. We can see the heathen god snares even in our own country, where the basis of our own Judeo-Christian institutions are being challenged, okay? I mean, challenge away, but come in peace, come to talk. In Mount Seir, Genesis 32:3, the land of Edom, southeast of the Dead Sea, in the area of Petra, some of Esau's descendants who also were Idumeans. And his son Eliphaz and his grandson Tamar, all in Turkestan. The Edomites named the Persians and the Turkestan plateaus the land of Temani. These are the Turkic Temani peoples. In the 11th century, many of these left Central Asia, moved to Asia Minor, or what we know today as Turkey. So I'm not here to pick on Turkey. I'm just giving you the history. Ottoman. It might be a little stretch, but it sounds a lot like Ottoman. Ottoman. The English derivation of the word Osman comes from the Turkish word as man, which is the Turkish name Othman. Othman was the founder of the Ottoman dynasty, but the Turks and the Hittites established the Ottoman Empire. You can see that in Obadiah verse 14 as well, 14, where they controlled the Dardanelles and the straits between the Black and the Aegean seas that separate Asiatic Turkey from European Turkey. Don't know how else to tell you. In the 10th century, the Ottoman Turks came into contact with Islam, and about this time, Islam became the principal religion among all the Central Asian relatives as well. Meshech, Tubal, all her multitude and her graves, all around. A U.S. House of Representatives committee once passed a joint resolution condemning Turkey for committing genocide against the Armenians in 1915. They tried it again a couple of years ago. Got a big hush-hush out of it. Armenia was the first Christian nation. So what does that tell you? They don't only want the Jews out of the way, but they want the rest of us. Going back to Obadiah, which is all about Edom and talks about him as a major world power, not a tiny people, how he destroys Jerusalem. But we'll read later in verse 15 who comes to his end. Okay? And when it says they are